This week's shiur is called Good Eye, Bad Eye, Mystical Insight into Eyesight. And the approach that we took last week was that one has to work on one's perception, that what one sees, one understands and churns it properly in one's mind to be able to see what he's meant to see. And we discussed that this has very much to do with the month of Tammuz, because the month of Tammuz is associated Kabbalistically with the letter Het, and also with the limb eyes, the eyesight, the concept of eyesight. Just incidentally, last week I made a mistake. I made an error, and I said Het. The letter Het hints to the concept of sin. Not the letter Het so much, rather the unity of the letter Het with the letter Tet in the month of Av, as opposed to the letter Het itself. I said that the letter Het is spelled Het and Tet, but it's not. It's spelled Het and Taf. What I should have said, or was meant to say, is that according to Kabbalah, the letter Het is associated with the month of Tammuz, the letter Tet with Av. These are the very dark months in the Jewish calendar, and these letters together, the letter Het of the month of Tammuz, the letter Tet of the month of Av, together indicate the concept of something lacking. Het in Hebrew means that there is something lacking. So we mentioned how the concept of sight can be used for seeing things and understanding it and perceiving it in a positive way. But particularly in the month of Tammuz, the Jewish people failed and erred in a month that should have been the greatest spiritual light of all. That was the month that Moshe Rabbeinu came down after hearing the Ten Commandments. Moshe Rabbeinu went up to be taught all of the teachings of the Ten Commandments and bringing it down to the Jewish people, and suddenly he sees the sin of the golden calf, and he broke the Ten Commandments on the 17th day of Tammuz. Really, that month should have been a month of unbelievable revelation. The truth is, there is a very deep relationship between darkness and light. There is a concept of what's called Yitron Ha'or Min HaHoshech. There is a great advantage, or there's greater appreciation of light where there is darkness. Where there was darkness and light is introduced, is a greater appreciation for that light. Then we went on to discuss the different errors or the different sins that were associated with the month of Tammuz that is read in the month of Tammuz. Predominantly the episode of the spies. We went through that last week. You can hopefully listen to it on the internet shortly when we post it up. And then we went through Korach, also made an error with his eyes, with his spiritual perception. He thought that he has great tzaddikim, Shmuel HaNavi, and others who emanate from him. He thought that he has legitimacy in the claim that he had against Moshe Rabbeinu. And again, his eyes, his perception caused him to err. And then, of course, we have Balak. Bayad Bilam. Bilam saw everything that the Jewish people did, and he misread the whole concept. He misread the whole position and purpose of the Jewish nation. And he was frightened and afraid for his own personal well-being and that of his country, that of his land. And he then asked Balak, which was the prophet of the Gentiles, to go and curse the Jewish people. And what did he do? He went and he tried to find and discover a place or a sin or a weakness or a spiritual vulnerability of the Jewish people. He went from one place to another place to another place to search and see and try and find a vulnerable spiritual place of the Jewish people, by which he can then accuse the Jewish people before God that, look, they are undeserving of their preeminence, their position in the world, and your blessing and your divine guidance. But alas, he did not find. And we also mentioned that he was also blind in one eye. That tells us that really his whole focus in life was seeing the negative, not the positive. We also mentioned, and I wanted to add to this, I don't recall whether I mentioned fully last week, that one of the parashiyot that we read is about the concept of the Jewish people complaining to God, and God brought an epidemic of snakes, which began to bite and kill some Jewish people. And Moshe Rabbeinu prayed on their behalf, and God instructed Moshe Rabbeinu to make an image of a copper snake, and thus you have the image of the snake that is used for medicine by doctors. They use that image of the snake. And he said, lift it up, al-nes, put it up high. Let the Jewish people see it, and whoever looks upon it shall be healed. And the Gemara asks, V'chi nahash memit, v'chi nahash mehayeh. Does the snake actually kill? Does the snake heal? Ela bizman she'Yisrael mestaklim klape ma'ala mitrapim. However, when the Jewish people look heavenwards, which means they're looking at the snake, but their mind's eye, their perception, what is behind what they're looking, that's the lesson that is to be learned here. The lesson to be learned in that parasha is the perception. You could be looking at whatever you want to look at, but what are you understanding? What are you seeing? What are you perceiving? God commanded the snake, the image of the snake. The very snake that caused you to die is the very one that causes you to heal. It seems not logical. Well, that's what the lesson here is all about, because it's not the snake that killed in the first place. Neither will it be the snake that heals. It is our perception. We may be looking at the snake. We may think it's a miraculous snake. It's not. We have to understand in our mind's eye the perception behind everything. That is that God heals. And that is what we have to rectify. And that is what we have to rectify in the month of Tammuz. That is what we failed in the month of Tammuz. Perception, how we looked at the scenario and the situation of Moshe Rabbeinu being tarried and being delayed and not coming down in time, and how the Jewish people began to imagine that that's it. Their future is bleak. So it is a perception that we have to work on. It is the concept of being able to perceive or see in the darkness. Remember, we said that the first letter, Het, where is the first time in the Bible that we find the letter Het? We find it in the word Hoshech. Right? There is darkness on the face of the depth. So this concept of darkness, the Het, that is the symbol of the month of Tammuz, is this concept of darkness. What does it mean? What does this concept mean? And this is what I want to concentrate on this week. There is a passage in our prayer that we say every single day. Yotzer or uvore hosher. God forms light and creates darkness. Those who have been in previous shurim will recall how we outlined that there are 4 letters of God's name, the tetragrammaton name, the main name, the name Havaya, Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey in that order. And the letters, these 4 letters correspond to the 4 general worlds that the Kabbalists often speak about. And they are the world of Atzilut, is the world of emanation. The world where it's only pure godliness. There's no concept of any physicality on that level. Then there's the world of Bria, which is creation. And that world already brings a division between creator and created, meaning to say that the concept of vessels or the concept of beings already brought into entity. And that world already is introduced a little bit of the concept of darkness or concealment or the source of negativity. But that world is predominantly good. Atzilut, the previous world, is only good. And then there's a world of Yetzirah, the world of formation, which the Kabbalists teach us is a world half concealment or half revelation or half good, half bad. And then the world of Asiyah, this world, the world of action, where predominantly it is concealment or negativity or falsehood, perception again, falsehood. and bad. Yud, Hey, and Vav, and Hey correspond to these four worlds. Atzilut is Yud. Bria is the first Hey of God's name. These are, remember we spoke before, the first two letters of God's name are the most powerful of the letters of God's name. They are the letters that are associated with the most hidden, sublime revelation of godliness. And then the other two letters correspond to the lower worlds, meaning to say that godliness now is trickling down and descending to lower worlds. Therefore, the concealment, in order for it to befit this world, has to be more concealment in order for this world to be able to handle that revelation. Therefore, we have a very important question. We say in our prayers every day when we thank God for the light and for the darkness, the same God that created light is the same God that created darkness. There's absolute unity in godliness. By godliness, bad, good, how we perceive bad and good to be, all comes from the one God. Therefore, the unity is absolute. And God is the essence of good. And therefore, really everything that emanates from God is absolute unity, absolute oneness, absolute good. The only point is, how does it trickle to this world? How do we perceive and understand it? Or how do we relate to it? Everybody, as we mentioned last week, in the name of Rabbi Yaakov Kanievsky, the Baal Kilat Yaakov, he writes that everyone can see the same thing, but not everybody will relate to the same thing. Some will look at this cup and say, oh, it's half empty. Some will look at it and say, it's half full. Some will see the fog on this and won't think that it's chilled water, will think it's chilled vodka. And thinking that, maybe I need, a little bit of a boost to, sort of, loosen me up a little bit and, get me in the mood of the shiur. Everybody will look at things differently. Now everybody's analyzing how quick I'm sipping this drink to be able to reveal to you, at least give you a bit of an indication what you really think it is. So, in order to dispel any false notions, I'll drink it in one shot. We have an important question, a prayer that we say every day. Baruch atah Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam. Blessed you, King of the universe. Yotzer or uboreh choshech. He who forms light and creates darkness. According to the principles of what we said before, the four worlds, which world is first? Atzilut, Biriya, Yetzirah. In the two worlds that we mentioned, he forms, in the two words that we mentioned, he forms light and creates darkness, which emanates seemingly from a higher creative energy of force. Light or darkness? Which one? You think light? You think light, but it doesn't. Darkness comes from a higher world, from a more hidden world. We said, Yotzer, he forms light, Uboreh choshech, and he creates darkness. Now, let me remind you, what are the four worlds? Atzilut, what's the next one? Beriah, creation. The next one is Yetzirah. The third world, a lower world, is the letter of the world of formation, and then this world of action, corresponding to the lower letters of God's name. The first is Yud, B'riyah is the second, the first Hey, and Yetzirah is Vav. The letter Vav is a much more of a revealing letter. Why is that? Because have a look at the way the Vav works. It comes down. The letter Vav comes down. That refers to the six. The letter Vav, by the way, is a numerical value of 6. That refers to the 6 emotions. Emotions are something that are revealed. In the 10 sfirot, in the 10 emanations, the Yud and the Hey and the Vav and the Hey represent the 10 emanations of God. The Yud corresponds to Chokhmah, wisdom. The Hey, Binah, understanding. So the first two letters of God's name are something that is very what? Very intimate with me. Is it revealed? Can you see? Can you look at my intellect and my understanding? No, absolutely not. Very intimate with me. It's not something that is very revealed. The next letter of God's name is associated with the 6 emanations, the 6 emotions. Something that is more revealing. Something that descends down more. You see, when I think about someone or something, that arouses an emotion within me. But it started way deep within me. The emotion is a revelation of what I'm feeling or what I'm thinking. So the emotion is when something already comes out to the fore. So spiritually speaking, it is a descent spiritually, because it is no longer something that is associated intimately with the concealed aspect of God. It is something that is more revealed. And by nature, when it comes to spirituality, anything that is revealed must be lower. Right? Because if it's revealed, it has to be in accordance with the vessels who were revealing it to, who God is revealing it to, and therefore it must be concealed. Something that is more intimate with God is more detached from the material or the vessels. Are you with me on that? So we understand that the world of formation is associated with emotions. The last this world is associated with speech or malchut. The last emanation. The last emanation is very much associated with speech. Speech is much more of a revelation, is it not? But it's much more of a concealment, is it not? Can I reveal everything that I'm thinking? No. It's very hard for me to be able to reveal what I'm thinking. So I'm limiting, in fact, what I'm thinking. Speech is very limiting. On the one hand, it reveals to a certain degree something that I'm thinking, but it cannot reveal everything because it's limiting. I can never speak as fast as what I'm thinking. That's this world. That's the last that's called Malchut, kingdom, or it's associated with speech. Because speech is limiting. So let's get back to our lesson. So, excuse me. The concept of darkness comes from a higher world, a place that is more intimate with God. So to speak, closer with his essence, something that is less revealed, correct? That's why, ladies and gentlemen, it is Hoshech. That's exactly why it's darkness. Because it cannot properly be perceived and understood in this world, so we perceive it as darkness. We look at it as something bad. There's no bad. As the sages say, no bad comes from heaven. It's impossible. God is the essence of good, no bad. No matter how bad we think something is, we have no idea what's behind it spiritually. We don't know what's going on spiritually. We only see things and perceive things in a physical way. You get a whack on the hand, it hurts. We can only relate to things in a physical way. We are pained by physical things, physical loss, physical pain. But we have no clue what's going on spiritually behind the scenes. Because that comes from a deeper, higher, holier place of godliness. And that's why it's perceived to us as darkness, because the vessel can't contain it. This physical world is not able to perceive it and understand it. So it's revealed to us as darkness. What is revealed to us as good is really on a lower level, ladies and gentlemen. What we can handle. Like emotions. You can see my emotions. You can feel my emotions. Easily revealed, easily appreciated by you. You can see if I'm upset. You can see if I'm happy. You can see if I'm sad. Whatever, etc. But what I'm thinking, you're not invited there. You can never come there. So let's then take this a step further. Now, the bounds of this world can only take a certain amount of light or godliness. Our objective, and the objective of the month of Tammuz, is to expand our perception, to expand, to push the vessel, so to speak, to make the vessel larger, that it can contain more spirituality. And guess what? when you stretch something, it hurts, doesn't it? When you stretch something, you stretch it, you pull it, it hurts. So too. The objective of this world, after the difficulties or the concealments that we went through, creation is also, on the one hand, a revelation, on the one hand, a concealment. If we have a look at creation itself, Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim v'et haaretz. God created the heaven and earth. V'haaretz hayta tohu vavohu, and the world was confounded and without any form. V'choshech al penei tehom, and there was darkness on the face of the depth. V'ruach Elohim merachevet al hamayim, and the Spirit of God hovers over the water. And then, only then, did God introduce to the world light. So, what preceded creation? You would think that what should be the first creation? What should be the first thing that creation is all about? What would you think? Light, no? Not the case. Darkness. Why? Because darkness is an even greater, deeper, higher dimension of revelation of God. The only problem is the vessels in this world cannot perceive it, understand it, and contain it. There's only one way, and that one way is to expand the perception, our perception, to expand the vessels. And to expanding the vessels hurts. For us, something like that is painful. It's difficult. These are the difficulties that humanity go through. These are the suffering and the pain that we go through. That allows the world for greater light and ultimately greater perception. But really, really, what we perceive as dark or unpleasant comes from a deeper, deeper place spiritually. The good that enters this world and integrates and is absorbed by the vessels is only a certain amount of light, and that light is readily appreciated by us, readily seen by us. But something that is beyond the realm of this world, you cannot see it, you cannot possibly understand it. And therefore it trickles down to this world in the lack of, or the concealment, or the darkness, or the pain, or the suffering, or the trial, or the tests. Therefore, the way we relate to it is through the mind's eye, not just the eye, the mind's eye. The eye will only see it in its physical flesh way. We have to relate to it in our mind's eye, and that is through perception. And that is the tikkun, the rectification of the month of Tammuz. Now, I want to read something out to you from Sefer Tanya Kadisha on chapter 26, the second half of chapter 26. I just want to mention, I'll mention it after I read this out. And he speaks about serving God with joy. And he says the challenges of serving God with joy, and we all have different tzarot, we all have different suffering and pains and anguishes and trials, tribulations. This guy took from me, this guy didn't borrow from me, this guy didn't pay me, this guy this guy that. We've got so many trials and tribulations. We have to worry about earning a livelihood, we have to take care of the children. This one did this one went with that, this one needs this one has that, this one doesn't, this one. Balagan, our whole day is spent on shtuyot, on balagan. We can easily fall into depression. This is what all this world is all about, what's going on here. So he speaks in the first half of how to serve God with joy and never fall into depression, never fall into sadness. Now listen to the second half. How do we overcome the trials and difficulties of this world? How do we overcome it? How do we relate to it? How can we serve God with joy when someone just gave me a whack of the head? I just got some bad news or something. So he says like this. The proper advice to cleanse and purge his heart. From any sorrow, sadness, or depression, and any worry. From worldly matters, from physical things. We should always be concerned about spiritual things. because that will propel us to improve. But we spend too much time worrying that the fridge is leaking. I'm not saying don't worry about the fridge is leaking, but I mean, there are more important things than, the fridge leaking. So you'll get it fixed, it's okay. But, we got to make sure that this soul is not leaking in the wrong way, if you know what I mean. That's a big worry. We have to worry about these things. Physical things. So how do we serve God whilst we have all of these physical things that worry us and bother us? Even in matters, vafilu, in matters of bane hayo mezoneh, even in matters of children, of sustenance, of life, of health, etc. Mudat zot lechol ma'amar azal, keshem shemevarech ala tova, kach yevarech, etc. Kach yevarech ala ra'ah. And he says, one has to be able to understand that everything comes from God. Just as one blesses over the good, so too one must bless over the bad. What does it mean, bless over the bad? What does it mean, bless over the bad? There are different blessings. When you have something good, you say, Hatov ha'metiv, thank God. Thank God for the goodness that you have given me. When we hear bad news, we make a totally different bracha. We don't say the same thing. We don't say, thank God for all the good you've given me. I just got a flat tire in the middle of the highway and it's raining and this and that. Thank God for the good news. I'm not too happy. I wouldn't be too happy about that, but you have to bless God. And what blessing do you make? Baruch Dayan Ha'emet, blessed be the true judge. Now, it's a different blessing. Because as we see things in this world, it's a bit of a bummer to be in the middle of a highway fixing a flat tire. And NRMA says that they're delayed and they're 2 hours away. But when we have joyous news, we jump for joy. The Gemara tells us, just as you made the blessing for good, so too must you make the blessing of bad. What does it mean, just? Kashem, just. Just means, just as you thanked God, and you were joyous and you rejoiced and you recognized that God is the essence of good, and He bestowed His bounty and His good upon you, so too must you recognize, even though it's hard to appreciate it, and you don't see it as good right now because we don't have the ability to, but at least in your mind's eye perceive that everything comes from God and everything is good. Like the famous story of Nahum Ish Gamzu. Nahum Ish Gamzu would always say, Nahum was a great scholar, was a righteous man. He's buried in Tzfat, by the way. Ever anybody visited his grave? Somewhere in the middle, almost like in the middle of a street somewhere. Whatever happened to him, he'd always say, Gamzu letovah, this is also good, this is good. This is good. Everything that happens is good. We don't always see it, we don't always see the end result. Person misses a train, he's very upset, misses a plane, he's very upset. Everything happens for a reason, we don't always see it. He always appreciated it in his mind eye, in his perception as good. And he accepted it, just as he would hear good news. Because he had the ability to understand that something that is negative even comes from a higher spiritual source. Listen to what he says here. Upirshu b'Gemara, and the Gemara have explained. What does it mean to make the blessing of the bad, just as one makes the blessing of the good, to make the blessing of the bad? Lekibula besimcha, to receive that news, that bad news that we received of being stuck in the highway, whatever the case may be, with joy. The same level of joy and acceptance and belief and faith in God that when you have great news. Como simchat hatova haniglit v'nirit, like clear, evident good that you clearly see and appreciate. Ki gam zu letova, for this is also good, because the unity of God is such that God is one. It's the same God that created darkness, the same God that created light. We unfortunately appreciate light more than we can perceive and appreciate the dark, but it's the same God. And therefore, when there are moments of darkness, we have to be able to bless God for that darkness. We have to be able to search within our mind's eye and perceive the good behind it. Why? רק שאינה נגלית ונראית לעיני בשר. כי גם זו לטובה, for this is also good. רק שאינה נגלית ונראית לעיני בשר, for this is unfortunately not able to be perceived by humanity with our fleshy eyes as good. This is a secret here. כי הוא מעלמא דאיתקסיה, for it comes from the hidden worlds. This is what we said before, the Yud and the Hey of God's name. It comes from the world of Bria, higher world. That higher world is a more intimate world. That higher world is a world of thought. Things there are not as revealed, not as seen. It's more intimate with God. Therefore, anybody who has been blessed to receive suffering or pain or anguish in this world should view it as kindness from God. And I know these words are difficult. Nobody wishes and wants anything bad. But if we truly believe in God, we will receive it with joy. At least we will receive it with faith. Because it comes from a deeper world, from a higher world. It's like the sea. It says when Mashiach comes, Maimonides finishes off his books, and he says, and he quotes a pasuk in the prophets, Umala dea et Hashem, Umala haaretz dea et Hashem, and the world will be filled with the knowledge of God. Kamayim layam mechasim, like water covers the earth. Or water covers the sea, rather. What does it mean, water covers the sea? There are things in the sea. There are things going on there. Things are happening there. There are billions of organisms in the sea. Things that are going on in the sea, we have no idea. But the water covers, we just simply don't see it. To us, it's just a blur, it's darkness. Throw a coin in the sea. Do you see it? You don't see it. It's gone. It's gone forever. When Mashiach comes, why does it say the world will be filled with knowledge like the sea covers, like the water covers the sea? Because when water covers the sea, you don't see what's going on. So too in this world, we don't really truly see what's going on. But when Mashiach comes, we will truly see. The hidden will become revealed. We will appreciate the hidden worlds. Because they are, that which emanates from the hidden worlds are greater than the revealed worlds. Shehu Vav Kei Mishem Havaya Baruchu. For the hidden worlds are associated with the last two letters of God's name. Emotions, God's emotions, and God's speech, so to speak. Something that is more revealed, less intimate. Something that's more revealed is less intimate. He who is associated or receives from the dark, or from the suffering, or from the pain, or the anguish, receives it from a more intimate place that cannot be revealed. And that is why it is only revealed as darkness, as difficulties. Be'alma di'tkasya, and the hidden worlds, who Yud Kei comes from the first letters of God's name, that are more associated with intellect. Intellect is more intimate. It's hidden. He who has now been exposed to something that is dark, right now is a recipient of something that comes from the more intimate world, the hidden world. The trick is to be able to receive it with a level of faith and belief in God, and if possible, joy. You were metaken, you have fixed and rectified the negative aspect of eyesight or perception. You have rectified the month of Tammuz. That the month of Tammuz ruined, so to speak, the concept of perception, of which the Jews looked at things in the wrong way. They read things in the wrong way. Here you are able to see in the dark. You're able to see in the dark. We have to learn to see in the dark. Because the darkness really emanates from a higher place. If you're able to see it, at least in your mind's eye, then you're on a lofty level. וזה שאמרו אשרי הגבר אשר תייסרנו יודקי. And there's a verse that says, Praiseworthy is a person that God chastises. Now the letters of God's name that is used for chastisement or bringing suffering upon him is the letters of Yud and Hey, which means that suffering comes from a higher place. And therefore, when the Jewish people saw seemingly Moshe Rabbeinu is not coming down, and they misread the whole situation, and they were suffering, and they were crying, and they led them astray. When these 12 tribes, when the 10 tribes went and looked at what's going on in Israel, and they already had an agenda beforehand, a negative agenda beforehand, they saw things in the wrong way. And when they came back and they told the Jewish people, look at these massive fruits, look what's going on in the land of Israel, they brought the negative report. What happened? They started to cry and mourn and wail. They saw things in the wrong way. That's why our rabbis of blessed memory said, those who rejoice in pain and suffering that comes to them, the verse speaks about them, concerning them, and says, those who love God, because those who receive it with faith and joy and happiness truly love God. Why? Because they're not concerned with the me and the I and the good for me and the what I want. They are concerned with an intimate relationship with God and developing a faith with God. And it says upon them, they are compared to the sun coming out and shining with its full strength. What does it mean? It says that the shemesh, the sun, has a covering over it, because the world cannot take its blinding light. When Mashiach will come, that casing will be removed, and the blinding light will no longer be blinding. We will be able to see from one end of the world to another, spiritually as well as physically. He who is able to see beyond the darkness, beyond the veil of concealment, in times of negativity or times of darkness, he is living the Messianic redemption. He is living what Mashiach is all about. It's as if he has taken the veil of the sun. What has he done? What's the sun responsible for, ladies and gentlemen? Light, right? What did we say that we need to do in order to increase God's light, to perceive it better in this world? We have to expand the vessel, right? That's what this guy did. Or that's what this lady did. They expanded their vessels to receive that light that ordinarily cannot be introduced to the world, cannot be perceived into the world. And that's why it comes to this world as darkness. As soon as they receive it in its right perspective, that concept no longer exists. That's why a nisayon, a test, is called nisayon. It comes from the word nes. Nes. Nes is a miracle, right? But you know what else nes is? Nes is a mast, something that is high up. When you put the flag up on the mast, something that is very high up. What do you call that thing in the ship? The mast. The thing in the ship, the highest point in the ship. You can see it from a mile away, 10 miles away. 10 nautical miles, 100 miles away. I love telling that to my kids. Nautical miles. Nautical miles. When a person is able to overcome a trial, a difficulty, a test, when a person sees nisayon, when a person is put through a test, he sees when a person encounters a test, a challenge, what? Examination. No, more like a challenge. When a person succumbs to temptation. That was the word I'm looking for. Temptation. Something is tempting him. And because he's tempted by it, he's looking at it in the wrong way. It's a test. You overcome your test. What have you done? You have lifted the banner of faith in God. You've expanded your vessels to include greater spiritual light in the world, the light that could not be perceived before your test. What you did now was an unbelievable hidush. You made a novel light come down to this world. That's why nisayon comes from the word nes, a test, a trial. A challenge comes from the word nes, because you're lifting the banner of God. You're lifting the banner of spirituality. You're lifting, increasing the light of God in the world. That's why when a person goes through a trauma and difficulty and is able to have faith in God and is able to receive it in the right perspective, and perhaps even, not only faith, but then even in a joyous or calm manner, such a person who has overcome the nisayon, this test, is a miracle. What is a miracle? What is a miracle? Suspension of the laws of nature. Beyond the laws of nature. What's nature? Concealment. Concealment. You went beyond concealment. You're beyond that. You're on a higher level. You're on a higher plane. You're on a plane of, you're intimate with God. You've built a very intimate relations with God. Let's continue. ויושב בסתר עליון. Sorry. כי השמחה היא מאהבתו. How can he be joyous when he's having difficulty? Because of his great love to God. קרבת השם יותר מכל חי העולם הזה. Because מאהבתו קרבת השם יותר מכל חי העולם הזה. Because he loves closeness and intimacy with God greater than this world. Greater than the good or the bad. He's able to go beyond that. Such a person says, Ki tov hastecha mechayim. Your good, your inner good, your intimate good is even greater than life itself. Ve'kivat Hashem biyeter says, Uma'ala en ketz be'alma ditkasya. And his closeness to God is limitless, because it comes from the hidden world. His relationship with God and his closeness to God is way, way, way beyond. It is very intimate. A guy who wins the lotto now, gets a fantastic news, and says, oh, mashallah, thank God, how great, beautiful. Oh, he's not close to God. He's doing the right thing. He's thanking God as we should. But that's not an intimate relationship with God. Intimate relationship with God, true relationship with God, is when a person has, God forbid, bad news. Bad news. God forbid, we should never have bad news. But if it ever comes, to have the right perception, to be able to overcome the test, the trial, to have faith and perhaps even joy, his intimacy and closeness with God is something unique. על כן זוכה לצאת השמש בגבורתה לעתיד לבוא, שהיא יציאת החמה מן ההרתקה, שהיא מכוסה בו בעולם הזה, לעתיד תתגלה מכוסיויה. דהיינו שאז גלה עלמא דאיטקסיה, ויזרח ויאיר, בגילוי רב ועצום לכל החוסים בו, בעולם הזה מסתופים בצילו. Such a person is introducing to the world the light that will exist in the Messianic redemption. He's heralding the Messianic redemption. He's bringing it closer.
Something good happens. Can't you just say thank God?
Absolutely, you should. Let's just finish. Absolutely, you should. You should. You should. Absolutely, should thank God. Let's continue. Let's analyze this a little bit. A beautiful example I saw of this is, for example, a teacher and a student relationship. A teacher takes a thought, and he dilutes the thought in order to make it palatable for the student to understand. The student takes a thought, a beautiful, brilliant idea from the teacher, and he is overjoyed. He understands that he's smiling from ear to ear, comes home, you know what a hidush, you know what a novel idea I learned today, wow, brilliant. The next day the teacher comes along and teaches him something very, very deep. And the student doesn't understand a word that he's saying. And he's sad, and he's upset, And he's depressed. And he thinks, well, what's going on here? I don't understand a word what he's saying. Doesn't make sense what he's saying. But really the teacher has exposed him to something that is very deep and very sublime. He's planted the seed that with time, or with concentration, or with effort, or if he pushes and stretches his intellectual boundaries, he will perceive a greater depth of intimacy of the wisdom and the knowledge of his teacher, way beyond what he was making somersaults the day before and was so glad and happy about. It's the same as that. When there is a great revelation of godliness, and it's just way beyond us, it comes in a manner of almost like concealment. It's like darkness. A student is hearing something, doesn't understand what his teacher is saying. To him it's darkness, it's not light. Is it light? It's not light, it's dark to him. But the teacher revealed to him something very deep. And if it's to exert himself, maybe he had a tie, maybe he was tired that day, maybe he didn't exert himself. He was to exert himself. Or maybe later on in time he'll look back and say, now I appreciate what the teacher taught me. Then when he taught it to me, I was upset at him. Then when he taught it to me, I thought, what is he telling me? I don't understand it. I don't appreciate it. Is he wasting my time? But if he didn't, what kindness he did to me. Now with time or with effort, or when I expanded my intellectual capacity, or maybe later on when I matured, what a teaching. What a teaching. How I thank him for teaching me something that then I cursed him and thought he was wasting my time. And speaking gibberish. Does that make sense? And that's exactly how it is. A deeper, more intimate relationship with the teacher. And therefore, so too Tammuz, the month of Tammuz. Remember, we said before, the month of Tammuz had contained within it the greatest opportunity for the greatest revelation, heralding the messianic redemption. Yet when there's something, opportunity of something very, 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 very high, there's also the opportunity of it, if it's perceived the wrong way, as total darkness. Obviously, they weren't ready for that test yet. And therefore, to them, they perceived it as absolute darkness. But equally, if the month of Tammuz is associated with darkness, that means what, ladies and gentlemen? That means what? It could be also the opportunity of the greatest light. That's the challenge of Tammuz. The challenge of Tammuz is to see in the dark. Yes, there's darkness in this world because we live in a world of concealment. You've got to see in the dark. And if you can't see with your fleshy eyes because we're physical, then see it with your mind's eye. See it with your mind's eye. Understand things the right way. Take things in the right way. Take things with absolute faith and belief in God. Interesting to note of Yitzhak. Yitzhak has an interesting relationship with eyesight. Which of the three forefathers became blind? Yitzhak. Interesting. I'm going to make this short because we ran out of time, but this last bit is quite expanded and has other very interesting elements to it, but we don't have the time. But I will just speak about one aspect of Yitzhak. Two aspects of Yitzhak, sorry.
If he lost his physical sight, does that mean that his spiritual sight was therefore enlarged?
Well, let's see. Something I'll leave up to you at the end. There are two reasons given why Yitzhak lost his eyesight. There's a few reasons. A few reasons given. Just a basic one. Yitzhak asked before he dies, before man dies, he should have some sort of sickness or illness in order to give him a hint to prepare himself for the world to come. If If a person passes away just like that, bang, never had an opportunity to prepare himself. But if he becomes sick a little bit, a week, 2 weeks, whatever it is, day, 2 days, he's got some, and God granted that wish by giving him blindness. He understood, as it says, that Yitzhak's eyes became blackened, darkened, because of his age, mizoken, from his age. So God answered his prayers. But I don't want to concentrate on that so much. There's 2 reasons given why Yitzhak was blinded. One reason, and perhaps both reasons complement each other. One reason was that Yitzhak was extremely, extremely holy. He was from the only one of our forefathers that was not permitted to leave the land of Israel. Abraham was, Yaakov was. Yitzhak, because he was placed on the altar of God, he's considered fully holy. It's like, there's different sacrifices. There's sacrifice that some parts goes to on the altar to God, some parts goes to the Kohanim, some parts goes to us, and everyone's happy. Like the Korban Shlamim, Korban Hagigah, it's a Shlamim also. The Korban Shlamim, particular sacrifice called Shlamim. Shlamim comes from the word Shalom, peace and harmony, because there's harmony and unity for everyone with the sacrifice. Then there's a Korban Olah. Olah Temimah means to say all of it goes for God. The whole sacrifice is burned for God. Nothing goes to the Kohanim, nothing goes to the owner of the sacrifice. Yitzhak is compared to that. He was on a very sublime level of holiness. He was not permitted to go out of the land of Israel. When he was placed on this altar, he saw an unbelievable divine sight. And I'm not going to go into the details of it because we don't have time. He saw an unbelievable divine sight. Years later, that divine sight caused his blindness. So it's almost like the Talmud always calls a blind person. What is the Talmud called a blind person? Saginahor. Saginahor means a lot of light. A person can be blind when they have a lot of light. The Talmud doesn't call him blind. The Talmud calls him Saginahor. Saginahor, a person has a lot of light. That's what the Talmud calls a blind person. Interesting. Yitzhak had this immense light, and therefore physically was blinded because perhaps he no longer saw the material things as pure physical things. Maybe he was blinded to the physical aspect of things. They used to say about the great Rabbi Yosef Rosen, he was called the Rogatchov Gaon, the genius of Rogatchov. He was such a genius in Talmudical scholar that he was so famous that in fact Einstein wanted to meet him, and Einstein actually met him, and he was asked, well, what do you think about the great rabbi? And he says if he would have studied secular or physics or whatever Einstein studies, he would have been 2 Einsteins. Can you imagine? Einstein said about him, he would have been 2 Einsteins, not 1 Einstein. Not equal to me. He would have been double me. He would have been 2 of me. Whenever he would look upon something, for example, someone was bringing a cupboard into his house, he would quote every place in Talmud and Zohar and Midrash and wherever that speaks about a cupboard or a piece of wood or whatever. He lived Torah. All he saw was Torah, no interest in anything else. So too the righteous, everything has a divine spark. Why do we make a blessing before we eat something? Because it has a divine spark that animates it. And it is up to us to, at least in our mind's eye, recognize it, if not with our spiritual eye. Maybe Yitzhak was blinded towards a later stage of his life because he no longer saw the physical. They say a story of the Or HaHaim HaKadosh. Or HaHaim HaKadosh was a great scholar and Kabbalist, Rabbi Chaim ibn Atad. He was born in Morocco and lived in the last part of his life, the last couple of months of his life, in fact, last 6 months of his life in Jerusalem. He was so removed from the physical world that when they needed to ask him a halachic question, by the way, the great Hida, Rabbi Chaim Yosef David Azullah, was one of his disciples, if anybody heard about him, prolific Sephardi scholar and writer. They would get a child that never sinned, a young child never sinned, to hold his hand, almost like bringing him down to this world a little bit, to relate to the question. When they needed to ask him a halachic question, He was just so far removed from this world. It's almost like he could no longer, at that later stage of his life, he could no longer relate to the material world anymore. So they had to get someone to hold his hand to bring him down a step, bring him down a notch. The son of the Admor HaZaken was so spiritual. The Baal HaTanya, who I just quoted from, his son, Rabbi Dov Ber, he was so spiritual that before he got married, his father had to prepare him 2 weeks to bring him down a little bit. For the concept of marriage, just the concept of physical, material life, to live with a woman. And even then he could barely do it after he got married. He couldn't relate to the physical world.
Why did she marry him? He had children. Earth is God.
She must have been a special lady as well. No doubt. And that's why they had special kids. It's like someone came to a rabbi and said, Rabbi, give me a blessing for a child. And if you're already giving me a blessing for a child, give me a blessing that my child will be like you. He was a great rabbi. He was a very great rabbi, spiritual man. And he says, I'll give you a blessing that you'll have a child like me, but you have to be a mother like my mother was to me. And he started to tell us some stories who his mother was. Not simple to have these holy children. You want to have holy children, you've got to be a holy person. But let me finish the story, which I forgot. So Yitzhak maybe couldn't relate to this world anymore. So he couldn't see any more physical things. Another interpretation that Rashi brings from the Midrash was because Esav, his son, married pagan wives, and they offered incense to their idol worship. And Yitzhak, being so pure, could not take this incense, so he was blinded by it. Again, these two commentaries really complement one the other. He was so spiritual, he couldn't see something that negates godliness. Couldn't relate to it. Why am I saying about Yitzhak? Because it's interesting to note that it says about Yitzhak, Vayetzel Yitzhak lasuach basadeh lifnot ha'erev. Yitzhak went to the field to pray to God towards evening, and I don't have the time to develop that, but I want to imagine, you would imagine that Yitzhak instituted the afternoon prayer because evening is coming about. And then it says, Vayisayina vayar, and he lifted up his eyes and he saw, who did he see? He saw his wife, Rivka, coming. So without having the time to develop this, so we see the concept of sight, we see the concept of Yitzhak developing the prayer that is associated with more evening setting in, darkness setting in. So therefore he was able to see even lifnot erev, even towards the darkness, he was able to somehow perceive. So Yitzhak has a very, very powerful relationship with darkness because he's associated with Gvura and Din. For those who know, who've been here before and have heard this before, I don't have the time to develop it. He's associated with the concept of God's divine justice and concealment. That's why he instituted the prayer of which the day is now ending and now we are beginning the night. And that's why he's associated with the concept of eyesight more so or blindness, or eyesight and blindness, or both, or spiritual, physical, or both, more so than the other forefathers. Okay, we'll stop here.